Welcome to a discussion about Weltpolitik und the wider German foreign policy from the 1900s onwards. Mein Lieblingscentury.
Well, as Remy just said, we're going to be talking about German foreign policy in today's episode. Weltpolitik, possibly our favourite word in the whole of the German dictionary.
We do think so, for the pure reason that you can go, Weltpolitik, and it sounds somehow loving, and yet it's
also quite horrible.
It's also quite a horrible thing. In a way, I actually lied. We're gonna begin. I think it's necessary to begin just with the alliance system, very, very quickly.
It's going to be a bit complicated this episode,
with
many alliances coming and going. But hopefully we will explain it in a good way.
Yeah.
And if not, do some revision by yourself,
yeah.
guys. Can't rely on our podcast.
It's true.
So yeah. Remy,
So yeah, we start off. 1882, the Triple Alliance between Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy, or which was unified at that time, I think. What was created. So that was there. In 1890 there was a new course. However, the Kaiser refused to sign a reassurance treaty with Russia. Because I don't know why he wanted more of an alliance with Austria-Hungary, and they kind of had eastern expansion on there.
Yeah, the key to remember just throughout this whole period with German foreign policy is that they didn't want to be at risk given a war on two fronts.
Exactly.
So they constantly, Bismarck was famous for just constantly balancing all these different interests and doing quite a good job of it. But after Bismarck, it became trickier. The following chancellors weren't so good at it. But they wanted to keep that balance, and make sure that they wouldn't get invaded on two fronts.
I think it's time for a game, Nathan. The game is called What Plan That von Schlieffen wrote in the 1890s was used from then on game. Which was a rubbish title.
Was it the Schlieffen Plan?
It was the Schlieffen Plan. And obviously, do your own vision, but it was how Germany could fight a war between France and Russia, or at least on two fronts. Which, as A.J.P. Taylor, great person from Oriel College, I'll add, said it comes very It is very relevant later. Anyway, relationship with Britain.
This is again so. It all kind of heads back to this German fear of being defeated militarily from lots of different fronts, and the German-British relationship is a very confusing one. It goes up and down and round about in many confusing, and it's difficult to tell what kind of relations they have. Yeah. But in the 1890s, it seems like there were some moves towards a proper sort of German-British alliance.
Yeah.
However, these failed, and then the Boer War. And in the early 1900s, worsened relations. Germany had links with the Dutch Boers.
Yeah, the President Kruger was congratulated by the Kaiser for his victory during the Second World War. Second Boer War, First Boer War. It was second. And that basically created a bit of beef between the two, for want of a better word. What's confusing, and what you must remember, is that
they're all
Queen
related.
Victoria and the Kaiser were very, very close.
And the Kaiser kind of admired Britain in many ways. So it's all very confusing. But basically the situation at the turn of the 20th century is that during Bismarck's time, Germany was very powerful. It seemed like there was no way to really unseat Germany at the centre of Europe. But this seems to be crumbling a bit. They've worsened relations with Germany, Russia and France allying. So you have the spectre of France in the east. To the west of Germany and Russia to the east. And although they have these alliances with Austria-Hungary and Italy, that does leave them exposed on their two flanks. And how strong are these alliances between Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy?
Exactly.
It's a bit unknown.
The Navy laws and Flottenpolitik was seen as a challenge to Britain's naval supremacy, and from 1906, when the Dreadnought was created, there was a bit of an arms race. 1902, Britain and Japan formed an alliance. And
further worries for Germany.
And the big one, the Triple Entente between Britain and France in 1904, then Russia in 1907, that really began to worry Germany.
Okay, so the first big crisis of the foreign policy crisis for Germany in the 20th century, which we haven't mentioned before, so it's a big one, guys. It's the Moroccan crisis, the first.
This was part of Weltpolitik, of which obviously was naval expansion and creation of a colonial empire and economic domination of Eastern Europe and Africa was the point of that.
So, what was the first Moroccan crisis, Remy, and when was it?
Well, 1905 to 1906 is when I believe it was the first one.
I would agree with you.
Morocco was under France's sphere of influence.
Yep.
But Germany also had some economic links there, and they're worried about France continuing to expand. So Germany, it's a bit bizarre. They demanded an international conference on Morocco's future. So I think they basically said, we want to have influence there. And they aimed to create a division between Britain and France and Russia.
Yeah, they basically hoped that the British would side with them, and then
and that Russia would side with Germany as well. But it failed, basically.
Yeah. Only Austria stood by Germany. Britain and Russia said it is France's right to have Morocco as their sphere of influence, and Germany's attempts at kind of brinkmanship, trying to force the French into agreeing with them by landing ships in Moroccan ports, it kind of backfired on Germany.
And this is one of the reasons for the creation of the Triple Entente between Britain, France and Russia.
Because they were a bit scared, because Germany was obviously rattling the sabres, so to speak, getting a bit antsy. So they thought, what better way to defend ourselves than by creating a big alliance that would, create fear in the Germans.
Definitely. And I've written it really badly, but it was the
Algeciras. Algeciras
Act, which basically confirmed that Morocco was in the French sphere of influence. Which leads us nicely on to the second Moroccan crisis.
Yeah.
Which was
in 1911.
Yep. I've actually written 191 in my book, but
I think that's supposed to be a 1911.
Yeah, I presume that was wrong. Yep. So 1909, France and Germany agreed to respect each other's interests, but then in 1911 there was unrest in the town of Fez, which France quelled with their military, and Germany claimed that this was against the
German business interests.
Yeah, against German business interests and the Algeciras Act. So Germany sent a gunboat to Agadir, which is in Morocco, and they tried to effectively ask France to withdraw from Morocco and to give up the French Congo, which is bizarre. I mean, the French Congo has nothing to do with it. This is where I find kind of 21st century Middle England knowledge of the world just becomes useless to understand how these people are thinking. It just seems totally ridiculous to me.
There's a lot of power politics, a lot of, trying to gain influence in ways that we don't really understand or even influence or power.
Lloyd George, British Prime Minister, he warned Germany against its aggression, and he put the British Navy on alert, and Germany eventually backed down.
They realised they weren't going to try and at this stage anyway. We'll see about that later. But at this stage, they weren't willing to provoke a war with France and what would look like Britain as well over the French Congo and the Moroccan. So we've seen the crises in North Africa, but there's another part of the world famous for its
crises.
That was also bubbling at the time.
Yeah, which I think we're going to
cover
in another episode.
Oh, is that true?
Looking at the time, I just before we finish, I would like to mention the Haldane mission of February 1912. Haldane was sent to improve relationships he was sent by Britain to improve them with Germany. But Germany was committed on its naval expansion, and it said it would only limit its naval fleet if Britain agreed to be neutral in any war in Europe. And Britain remained loyal to France, so Germany said, right, if you're going to do that, we're going to pass a new naval bill. And the naval race continued. And Kaiser had a war council meeting with German leaders, in which war was not planned, but there was a feeling it could occur with Britain.
So I guess what we've got at this stage, unfortunately, we've covered sort of one pillar of why we lead ourselves to a cataclysmic, horrible First World War, which is the kind of the treaty system, and also what was going on in North Africa and the naval race. The various tensions building up between the big powers in Europe. We haven't covered the trigger cause yet, but I think that deserves a podcast in itself.
It does. So thank
we'll leave you with that dangling over the next episode. The possibility of some lovely Southeast European wars.
Yes, and just remember to have peace and don't try and claim the French Congo for yourself, because it just creates.
Revise this for yourself, because this is so complicated.
Yeah, we do recommend that. So, Remy and Nathan over and out. See you.
Good night.
Another time. Good night.